And speaking of the poverty crisis, let's stick with that. It's affecting so many Australians right now. A report by the Salvation Army has found tens of thousands of Australians are sinking into extreme poverty. That probably won't come as a surprise to many of you. It's a cost of living crisis. We've got the most vulnerable forced to take desperate measures to survive. Joining me now as a champion in this area, Major Brendan Nottle from the Salvation Army, does incredible work in Melbourne. I've known him for many years. It's great to see you again, but on such a sad note, Brendan, how bad are things out there? Give our Sky audience around Australia some sort of an idea if you can.
Oh, Steve, look, I feel like we're the canary down the mine, and we've been seeing this for a number of months now. And just last week, I had a woman say to me, I've made a conscious decision not to switch the heating on in my home this winter. And when you hear things like that, it actually says this is not about comfort. This is actually a decision that's being made by multiple people right across the nation, which potentially is a life and death situation. So you get an elderly person, a person whose health is compromised, and they live in a freezing cold house in winter. It's potentially death for them, and that's how serious this matter is now.
Governor of the Reserve Bank made a number of comments today. One that I think was actually pretty accurate. It involves how uneven this is hitting the Australian community. Have a listen to Philip Lowe.
I acknowledge that this tool comes with some complications. Its effects are felt unevenly across the community, and rising interest rates are causing significant financial pressures for some households. But this unevenness is not a reason to avoid using the tool that we have.
Brendan, that's an accurate reflection, you'd have to say, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. But I think, Steve, you know, the situation's that bad now that we actually need our decision makers, not just in the political sphere, not just in the Reserve Bank, but across corporate life as well, to actually come and see what it's like on the front line, to actually begin to understand how tough it is and to hear the decisions that people are making every day, not because they're trying to maintain their sense of comfort, it's so they can survive. I had a young family say to me that they decided to get rid of their comprehensive car insurance on their car. Their car got stolen. They can't get to work. You know, another family that live in a fire-prone area, bushfire-prone area, is saying they can no longer pay the house insurance. So if they lose their house, they're completely up the creek. And it's these sorts of decisions. We're hearing people consistently now say to us, I'm having to decide about whether I have one meal a day or 2 meals a day or no meals because I simply cannot afford to survive. These decisions that are being made in Canberra, these decisions that are being made by the Reserve Bank, I understand they've got to be made, Steve, but we've got to understand the impact that these decisions have on people that are doing it so tough at the moment. It's really biting hard.
I know the Salvos did a survey, I think, of 1,700 people who used your services over the last 12 months. 93% were finding it tough to afford basic items. I mean, one of the worst stories I've heard in the last 6 months or so are people turning up at pharmacies where they have prescriptions for medicine that their children need, but they've got to decide and talk to the chemist and say, well, I can afford that one, but I can't afford this one.
Oh, absolutely, Stephen. It's also people that should be going to the doctor but just simply cannot afford to go to the doctor. And so they're deciding to actually live with, in some cases, quite serious health concerns that have to be treated by a medical expert. So that's another part of the issue too. And we're seeing people now in increasing numbers living in their cars, to the point now, Steve, where we're having to set up an outreach service that's going out looking for increasing numbers of not just individuals, but families that are living in cars. And when you stop and think about how resource rich our nation is, and you stop and start to realise that there are Australians, good people, that just simply cannot make ends meet and now have to live in their car. And the concern for us is that we haven't reached rock bottom as far as the economic downturn is concerned. We think the worst is still to come. And we think the numbers of people that we're seeing, one, sleeping in their cars is going to increase, and two, coming to services like ours just simply for meals is going to increase. Steve, we're seeing people consistently in our centre in Melbourne now who are turning up in high-vis gear. They're employed full-time. They're doing everything they can to make ends meet, and they simply can't. And so they're having to come to centres like ours just to get over the line and have a meal.
Well, here's an example. This was a caller on Neil Mitchell's program on 3AW today, Brendan. Have a listen to what she had to say.
Our mortgage has gone up about $800 a month, and we've got 4 kids, and it's really hard. It's really, like, I had two kids have to go to the doctor yesterday, and it wasn't being able to be bulk billed, and then they needed X-rays, and it's actually the decision of
But
do we do this or don't we do this?
You can't cut back on healthcare for the kids, though.
No, and that's exactly right. So what do you cut back on? Because in the end it was $400 for X-rays and the doctor's appointments, and I still didn't get the ultrasounds that they wanted them to get. So, yeah, it's starting to bite.
Just heartbreaking, Brendan. I know the Salvation Army's Red Shield appeal is on. I think it runs till the end of June. How could people actually donate if they're touched by what they've heard tonight?
Well, I think when we're looking at the things that are going on at the moment, Steve, right across the nation, it's heartbreaking. But I find it inspiring at the same time because Australians step up. And if people are able to donate in some way, even if it's a small amount, we deeply appreciate that. And they can go to 13 Salvos and call, or they can go to salvationarmy.org.au to make a donation online. And whatever they can give, we deeply appreciate.
Brendan Nottle, great to catch up with you again. You do an outstanding job, and I urge everybody to ring that number 1300 Salvos. Good on you, Brendan.